Billionaire CEO's rules were emphatically clear: no black muscular man, until he walked in. She pressed her manicured finger against the mahogany conference table in the 47th floor of Manhattan's Chrysler Building, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. The rules are non-negotiable, gentlemen. No exceptions. But when the elevator doors opened that Tuesday morning, everything Victoria Sterling thought she knew about power, prejudice, and her own heart would shatter in an instant. Before we get deep into today's story, please let me know in the comment where you're watching from. Hit subscribe if you're hooked in and ready to enjoy the story, because tomorrow, I have another beautiful story to share with you and I don't want you to miss it for anything. Once again, you're welcome to Mr. Paul's Stories, where we weave our dreams and hearts together through the magic of stories. Before we dive deeper into today's soul-stirring tale, please, give a minute, let me say a word of prayer with you today. May your heart brim with boundless love, may your spirit sparkle with hope and wonder, and may a cascade of blessings wrap you in warmth and peace. I pray this story binds us closer, lifts our souls, and fills us with the beauty of shared moments. Amen. Now, my precious friends, let's begin today's story. The morning sun cast long shadows across Victoria Sterling's corner office, Manhattan, New York, and Detroit, Michigan, its golden rays illuminating the sprawling view of Central Park below. At 34, she commanded Sterling Enterprises from the 47th floor of the Chrysler Building with an iron fist wrapped in Hermes silk. Her perfectly styled auburn hair caught the light as she reviewed the quarterly reports, each number a testament to her ruthless efficiency. Ms. Sterling. Her assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. The board meeting is in 10 minutes. Victoria's green eyes never left the documents. Remind them of the hiring parameters we discussed. I want it crystal clear. Our executive protection team maintains specific standards. Those standards had built her empire. Sterling Enterprises, inherited from her late father, had grown from a modest security firm to a billion-dollar conglomerate under her leadership. Every decision was calculated, every hire scrutinized through her carefully constructed filters. The company's executive protection division was her crown jewel, elite, exclusive, and exactly as she demanded. Her fingers drummed against the Italian leather desk pad. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford, not after what happened in Chicago 3 years ago. The betrayal that nearly destroyed everything she'd built had taught her that some risks simply weren't worth taking. Meanwhile, 635 miles away in Detroit, Marcus Washington's alarm buzzed at 4:30 a.m., the same time it had for the past 8 years. His massive frame unfolded from the narrow bed in his Corktown apartment, muscles still aching from yesterday's double shift at the automotive plant. At 6'4" and built like the linebacker he'd been at University of Michigan, Marcus filled the small space with quiet determination. The morning routine was sacred: 50 push-ups, protein shake, review of job applications on his laptop. The screen showed dozens of rejections, each one a paper cut to his pride. Stanford MBA, decorated military service, spotless record. None of it seemed to matter when his photo was attached to the application. His daughter Zara's picture smiled at him from the kitchen counter, her gap-toothed grin a reminder of why he couldn't give up. 8 years old and brilliant beyond her years, she deserved better than this cramped apartment and her father's increasingly desperate job search. "Daddy's going to New York today," he whispered to the photo, straightening his best suit, the same navy blue one he'd worn to every interview for the past 6 months. "Something's going to change, baby girl. I promise." The train ticket to Penn Station sat on the counter next to his keys. Sterling Enterprises had finally agreed to an in-person interview after months of his persistent applications. Their executive protection division was recruiting, and Marcus knew he was overqualified for the position. But overqualified was better than unemployed. His reflection in the bathroom mirror showed a man who'd been knocked down but refused to stay there. The scar above his left eyebrow, a souvenir from his army deployment, had faded but never disappeared, much like his hope. The megabus to New York would take 8 hours. 8 hours to prepare for the opportunity that could change everything, or the rejection that might finally break him. As Victoria Sterling adjusted her pearl necklace and prepared to remind her board of directors about their standards, Marcus Washington locked his apartment door and began the journey that would collide their worlds in ways neither could imagine. What do you think shapes our first impressions of people? Have you ever had to challenge your own assumptions about someone based on appearance alone? Share your thoughts below. Your story might inspire someone else's journey. The elevator's polished steel doors reflected Marcus Washington's determined expression as he ascended to the 47th floor. His hands, steady despite the magnitude of this moment, adjusted his tie one final time. Through the elevator's glass wall, Manhattan's skyline stretched endlessly, a concrete jungle where dreams either soared or shattered. The Sterling Enterprises reception area whispered wealth in every detail: Italian marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and oil paintings that probably cost more than most people's homes. The receptionist, a blonde woman with surgically enhanced features, looked up from her computer with practiced indifference. "Marcus Washington," he announced, his voice carrying the quiet confidence of a man who'd faced Taliban fighters and corporate boardrooms with equal composure. "I have a 2 p.m. interview for the executive protection position." Her perfectly manicured fingers paused over the keyboard. Her eyes traveled from his face to his broad shoulders, lingering on the way his suit jacket stretched across his muscular frame. Something shifted in her expression, a flicker of surprise, perhaps doubt. Let me check with Ms. Sterling's office." The whispered phone conversation that followed contained words Marcus had heard before. "Are you sure? The appointment is confirmed, but I think there might be some mistake." 20 minutes later, the same elevator carried him to the executive conference room where Sterling Enterprises' board of directors waited. The mahogany table stretched like a battlefield, surrounded by 12 chairs occupied by 11 white faces and one conspicuously empty seat at the head. "Gentlemen," came a voice from behind him, sharp and commanding, "thank you for your patience." Marcus turned, and time seemed to slow. Victoria Sterling entered the room like she owned not just the building but the very air inside it. Her auburn hair was pulled into a sleek chignon, her charcoal business suit tailored to perfection. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold, emerald green and intelligent, currently wide with something that looked remarkably like shock. She paused mid-step, her hand frozen on the door handle. For a heartbeat that stretched into eternity, they simply stared at each other across the polished conference table. The tension in the room was palpable, 11 board members sensing something significant was happening but not understanding what. "Ms. Sterling." The elderly man to Marcus's right cleared his throat. "Shall we proceed with the interview?" Victoria's composure returned like armor snapping into place. She moved to her chair with fluid grace, but Marcus caught the slight tremor in her hands as she arranged her papers. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Mr. Washington." His name sounded different when she said it, not dismissive, but careful, as if she were tasting something unexpected. "Your resume is impressive. Stanford MBA, military background, extensive security experience." "Thank you, ma'am." Marcus remained standing until she gestured for him to sit. Even seated, his presence seemed to fill the room. "Tell me," Victoria continued, her fingers drumming silently against the table's edge, "what makes you believe you're suitable for protecting Sterling Enterprises' most valuable assets?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus leaned forward slightly, his dark eyes meeting her green ones directly. "Because I know what it means to protect something worth dying for, Ms. Sterling. In Kandahar, I shielded my unit from an IED blast that left me with this," he touched the scar above his eyebrow, "and saved 7 lives. In Detroit, I've been protecting my daughter's future every day for 8 years, working double shifts and earning my MBA at night because she deserves a father who never gives up." His voice grew stronger, more passionate. But real protection isn't just about physical strength or tactical training. It's about understanding what matters most to someone and being willing to sacrifice everything to keep it safe. Your company, your reputation, your peace of mind, they're not just business assets to me. They'd become personal. Victoria's breath caught almost imperceptibly. Something in his words, or perhaps the raw honesty in his voice, seemed to penetrate the careful walls she'd built around herself. "Interesting perspective," she managed, though her voice sounded slightly strained. "However, our clients have certain expectations. Comfort levels that need to be maintained." The euphemism hung between them like a sword. Marcus's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "What kind of comfort levels, Miss Sterling?" The question forced her to look directly at him again. In his eyes, she saw no anger, no accusation, just a man asking her to be honest about the prejudices she'd been dancing around. "The kind," she said slowly, each word carefully chosen, "that ensure our clients feel completely secure and familiar with their protection details." "I see." Marcus nodded, his expression unreadable. "And you believe I wouldn't provide that sense of security?" Victoria opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. Because looking at him now, this articulate, dignified man who spoke of sacrifice and protection with such genuine conviction, she realized she didn't know what she believed anymore. The silence stretched until another board member interrupted. "Perhaps we should discuss compensation and—" "Actually," Victoria said suddenly, surprising herself with the words, "I'd like to conduct the rest of this interview privately. Gentlemen, thank you for your time." The dismissal was clear. As the board members filed out, exchanging glances and whispered conversations, Victoria and Marcus remained seated across from each other. The massive conference room suddenly felt intimate, charged with an energy neither had expected. "Why?" Marcus asked quietly once they were alone. "Why what? Why did you dismiss them? Your board seemed ready to conclude this meeting." Victoria studied his face, searching for something she couldn't name. "Because I realized I don't know you. Not the man behind the resume, behind the preconceptions I walked in here with." Her admission hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. "What would you like to know?" Marcus asked, his voice softer now, almost gentle. Victoria looked out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the city below, then back at him. "Everything," she whispered, and in that single word, both of them heard the sound of carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. Have you ever had a moment where you realized your assumptions about someone were completely wrong? That split second when everything you thought you knew shifted? Tell us about a time when first impressions led to something unexpected. We'd love to hear how it changed your perspective. The elevator descended in suffocating silence, each floor marking Victoria's retreat from a moment that had shattered her carefully constructed world. Her hands trembled as she pressed herself against the mirrored wall, watching Marcus's reflection multiply infinitely around her. The impossible had happened in that boardroom. Her heart had recognized something her mind refused to accept. "Ms. Sterling." His voice was steady, professional, but she caught the underlying current of something deeper. "About what just happened up there?" "Nothing happened." The words came out sharper than intended, a defensive blade she wielded against her own vulnerability. Victoria's finger found the emergency stop button, and the elevator lurched to a halt between the 35th and 36th floors. "Nothing at all." Marcus turned to face her fully, his massive frame somehow managing not to crowd the space. In the harsh fluorescent lighting, she could see the intelligence in his dark eyes, the quiet strength that had nothing to do with his impressive physique. It terrified her more than any hostile takeover ever had. Then why are your hands shaking? Victoria looked down, horrified to see he was right. Her perfectly manicured fingers, which had signed billion-dollar deals without a tremor, were betraying every emotion she'd spent years learning to suppress. She clenched them into fists, pressing her nails into her palms until the pain grounded her. You need to leave. Her voice barely reached a whisper. This position isn't. It's not suitable for someone like you. Someone like me. Marcus repeated the phrase with devastating calm. You mean someone black. Someone who doesn't fit your predetermined mold. The accusation hung between them like a challenge. Victoria wanted to deny it, to claim it was about qualifications or company culture or any of the polite euphemisms she'd mastered over the years. But standing this close to him, seeing the disappointment flicker across his features, she couldn't find the lies that usually came so easily. You don't understand the complexities of this business, she said instead, restarting the elevator with a sharp jab. The clientele we serve have expectations. Racist expectations. Practical expectations. The elevator doors opened on the lobby, and Victoria stepped out like she was escaping a cage. This conversation is over, Mr. Washington. My assistant will provide you with compensation for your travel expenses. But Marcus didn't follow her retreat. He remained in the elevator, one large hand holding the doors open, his presence a gravitational pull she felt even as she walked away. Ms. Sterling. His voice carried across the marble expanse of the lobby, drawing curious glances from other employees. When you're ready to have an honest conversation about what really happened up there, you know where to find me. The elevator doors closed with a quiet ding, and Victoria was alone with the echo of his words and the hammering of her own heart. 3 hours later, at the Parker Meridian Hotel, Marcus sat in the hotel's lobby bar, nursing his second cup of coffee and watching the elegant crowd of Manhattan's elite flow around him like water around a stone. His interview suit felt like armor now, protective but ultimately insufficient against the battle he'd just fought and lost. His phone buzzed with a text from his sister in Detroit. How did it go? Zara keeps asking when Daddy's coming home with good news. He stared at the screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard. How did you explain to an 8-year-old that sometimes the world still worked exactly the way it did 50 years ago? That all the degrees and accomplishments and good intentions in the world couldn't overcome the color of your skin in certain circles? Mind if I join you? Marcus looked up to find a distinguished older man with silver hair and knowing eyes. The stranger's expensive suit and confident bearing marked him as someone accustomed to power, but his smile seemed genuinely warm. Depends on whether you're here to offer me another job I'm not suitable for, Marcus replied, his voice carrying more bitterness than he intended. The man chuckled, settling into the opposite chair without invitation. James Mitchell. I was in the boardroom this morning. He extended a hand that Marcus shook cautiously. Retired board member, but I still drop by for the entertainment value. Then you witnessed quite a show. I witnessed something I haven't seen in that boardroom for 20 years. Someone making Victoria Sterling genuinely uncomfortable. James signaled the waiter for 2 whiskeys. The question is, what are you planning to do about it? Marcus frowned. I'm planning to go home to Detroit and explain to my daughter why her father is still unemployed. That would be a shame. The whiskey arrived, and James raised his glass in a mock toast. Because what I saw up there wasn't rejection, son. It was terror. Terror of hiring a black man? Not exactly groundbreaking in corporate America. Terror of wanting to hire a black man. James took a sip, his eyes never leaving Marcus's face. Victoria Sterling has spent her entire adult life building walls. Today, you walked through them like they were made of paper. That's not something she's equipped to handle. Marcus felt something stir in his chest, Not hope exactly, but curiosity. Why are you telling me this? Because I've watched that brilliant, stubborn woman isolate herself for 3 years, ever since Chicago. James leaned forward conspiratorially. And because I have a daughter her age who's just as determined to punish herself for other people's failures. What happened in Chicago? That's her story to tell. But I will say this, Victoria Sterling isn't the woman you met in that boardroom today. She's the woman she built to survive what someone like you could do to her carefully ordered world. Marcus drained his coffee, processing the cryptic advice. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan pulsed with its relentless energy, millions of people pursuing their own versions of success and happiness. Somewhere in that maze of steel and ambition, Victoria Sterling was probably in another boardroom, pretending the morning had never happened. What would you do? Marcus asked finally. In my position? James Mitchell smiled, the expression carrying decades of hard-won wisdom. I'd remember that the strongest walls are built by people with the most to protect. And I'd ask myself what might be worth protecting so fiercely. He stood, leaving a 20 on the table and a business card beside Marcus's empty cup. The question isn't whether you're suitable for Sterling Enterprises, Mr. Washington. The question is whether Sterling Enterprises is suitable for you. As James walked away, Marcus picked up the card. Simple, elegant lettering, Mitchell and Associates, Strategic Consulting. On the back, a handwritten note, some battles are worth fighting twice. J.M. Through the hotel's glass doors, Marcus could see the Chrysler Building piercing the afternoon sky, its Art Deco spire a monument to ambition and dreams made manifest. Somewhere in its shadow, Victoria Sterling was building new walls to replace the ones he'd somehow damaged. The question was whether he had the courage and the right to try breaking them down again. His phone buzzed with another text from Detroit. Daddy, Mrs. Johnson says you're going to get the best job ever because you're the smartest, strongest daddy in the world. Love you. Marcus smiled for the first time all day, pocketing the business card. Maybe some battles were worth fighting twice. The elevator lurched to a violent stop between the 23rd and 24th floors of the Chrysler Building, throwing Victoria against the mirrored wall. The lights flickered once, twice, then died completely, plunging them into suffocating darkness. What the hell? Victoria's voice cracked with the first hint of vulnerability Marcus had heard from her. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting eerie red shadows across their confined space. The elevator car, which had seemed spacious moments before, now felt like a tomb. Victoria's breathing quickened, her composed facade cracking like ice under pressure. Marcus instinctively moved toward the control panel, his military training kicking in. Ma'am, I need you to stay calm. Power outages in older buildings can affect the elevator systems. Don't you dare tell me to stay calm, Victoria snapped, but her voice trembled. She pressed herself against the far corner, as far from him as the small space allowed. This can't be happening. Marcus studied her carefully. The woman who had dismissed him with surgical precision just minutes earlier was now hyperventilating in the corner. Her perfectly manicured hands shook as she fumbled for her phone. No signal, she whispered, staring at the black screen. There's no signal. Emergency services will know, Marcus said quietly, pressing the alarm button. A weak buzzer sounded somewhere in the building's depths. Building management will have us out within the hour. Victoria's laugh was sharp, bitter. You don't understand. I can't be trapped. Not like this. Not with. She stopped herself, but Marcus heard the unfinished sentence hanging in the air. Not with you. The word stung more than he expected. 20 minutes passed in tense silence. Victoria had slumped to the floor, her expensive suit wrinkled, her composure completely abandoned. Marcus remained standing, occasionally testing the buttons, maintaining a respectful distance. "Why don't you just say it?" Victoria's voice was barely above a whisper. "Say what?" "That this is karma. That the racist bitch is getting exactly what she deserves, trapped with a man she wouldn't even consider hiring." Her green eyes glittered with unshed tears in the red emergency light. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentler than she expected. "My grandmother used to say that God doesn't operate on our timeline, Ms. Sterling. Maybe we're both here for a reason neither of us understands yet." Victoria looked up sharply. "Your grandmother was religious?" "Baptist minister's wife in Alabama. Raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 7. Marcus settled against the opposite wall, finally allowing himself to sit. "She used to say that every person who crosses your path is either a blessing or a lesson. Sometimes both." The admission hung between them like a bridge neither had expected to find. "I'm claustrophobic," Victoria whispered suddenly. "Have been since I was 12. My father, he used to lock me in the wine cellar when I disappointed him. Hours sometimes. He said it would teach me discipline." Marcus felt something shift in his chest. The Ice Queen was melting, revealing a frightened child underneath all that armor. "How old were you when he died?" 26. "Cancer took him in 6 months." Victoria's voice was hollow. "The day he died, he told me that Sterling Enterprises would never survive under a woman's leadership. That I'd prove him right within 5 years. And instead you've built an empire." "I've built a fortress," she corrected. "There's a difference." The elevator creaked ominously, and Victoria flinched. Without thinking, Marcus moved slightly closer. Not enough to invade her space, but close enough that she wasn't alone in her corner. "Tell me about your daughter," Victoria said suddenly, surprising them both. Marcus blinked. "How did you?" "The photo in your wallet. When you opened it for your ID. She looks like she has your smile." For the first time since entering the building, Marcus's expression softened completely. "Zara. She's 8, going on 30. Wants to be a doctor like her mama was. Leukemia. 3 years ago." The words came out steady, practiced from repetition. "Zara doesn't remember much about being sick, but she remembers her mama being brave. Says she wants to help other kids be brave too." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. "Is that why you need this job?" "Medical bills." "Medical bills, yes. But also—" Marcus looked down at his hands. "I want to give her the world, Ms. Sterling. I want her to grow up knowing that her father is someone she can be proud of. Right now, I'm just a man who can't find work in his own field despite having every qualification they ask for. Because of your race." The words hung in the air like a confession. Marcus met her gaze steadily. "Yes, ma'am. Because of my race." Victoria closed her eyes. "My father's voice is still in my head sometimes. All the things he taught me about who to trust, who to hire, who belonged in our world. I've spent so many years following his blueprint that I forgot to question whether it was right." "Fear makes us do things we're not proud of," Marcus said quietly. "But it doesn't have to define who we become." The elevator shuddered, and somewhere in the building, they heard the distant sound of machinery starting up. Help was coming, but neither of them moved to stand. "If I offered you the job," Victoria said slowly, "would you take it? Even after today?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "Would you be offering it because you're trapped in an elevator and feeling guilty, or because you genuinely believe I'm qualified?" The honesty of the question hit Victoria like a physical blow. She looked at this man, really looked at him, and saw something she'd been trained not to see. Intelligence, integrity, strength that had nothing to do with his muscular frame and everything to do with his character. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I'd like the chance to find out." The elevator lurched back to life, rising smoothly toward the lobby. As the floors ticked by, both of them felt the outside world rushing back in. Expectations, prejudices, the weight of their respective positions. But something had shifted in that small space between floors. A crack in Victoria's carefully constructed walls. A glimmer of hope in Marcus's determined heart. When the doors opened to reveal concerned building security and maintenance crews, they stepped out as different people than they'd been going in. The question was whether the change would survive in the harsh light of their separate worlds. "Mr. Washington," Victoria said as they reached the lobby, her professional mask sliding back into place but not quite fitting as perfectly as before. "I'll have my assistant call you. We should discuss your application further." Marcus nodded, understanding the careful dance they were performing for the audience around them. "Thank you, Ms. Sterling. I look forward to hearing from you." But as they parted ways at the Chrysler Building's gleaming entrance, Victoria toward her waiting car, Marcus toward the subway that would take him back to Penn Station. Both carried something new with them. A seed of possibility that hadn't existed before the elevator stopped. The question was whether either of them would be brave enough to let it grow. The morning air in Central Park carried the scent of dew-kissed grass and fresh possibilities as Victoria and Marcus walked along the winding path near Bethesda Fountain. After spending the night in the emergency shelter, they'd emerged into daylight changed, no longer CEO and applicant, but two people who'd glimpsed something real in each other. Victoria's usual armor of designer suits had been replaced by jeans and a simple sweater borrowed from the shelter's donation box. Without her corporate facade, she looked younger, more vulnerable. Marcus walked beside her, his presence both protective and gentle, as if he understood she was navigating unfamiliar territory. "I never come here anymore," Victoria admitted, stopping near a bench overlooking the lake. "My father used to bring me here every Sunday when I was little. We'd feed the ducks and he'd tell me stories about building his empire from nothing." Marcus settled beside her, careful to maintain respectful distance while staying close enough to catch the tremor in her voice. "What changed?" Victoria's fingers traced patterns on the weathered wood. "Chicago happened 3 years ago." She paused, watching a young couple push their toddler on a nearby swing. "I was expanding Sterling Enterprises into the Midwest. Hired a security team for a high-profile client, a tech mogul who'd been receiving death threats." Her voice grew quieter. The team leader was impressive, charismatic, confident, all the right credentials. "I trusted him completely. Maybe too completely." Marcus felt a shift in her energy, the way her shoulders tensed as if bracing for a blow. He'd seen that look before, in his own mirror after particularly brutal rejections. "He was stealing from us," Victoria continued. "Not just money, client information, security protocols, trade secrets. But the worst part? He was selling that information to the very people threatening our clients. 3 families nearly died because I trusted the wrong person." The fountain's gentle splash filled the silence between them. A jogger passed, earbuds in, oblivious to the confession unfolding on the bench. "The board blamed me," Victoria whispered. "Said I was too emotional, too trusting. My judgment was questioned, my leadership challenged. I almost lost everything my father built." Marcus reached out instinctively, his large hand covering her smaller one. The contact sent electricity through both of them. Unexpected, electric, undeniable. "So you built walls," he said softly. "Made rules to keep people out." Victoria nodded, not pulling away from his touch. "Safe choices." Predictable choices. No more risks. Including people who look like me. The words hung in the air like morning mist, gentle but inescapable. Victoria's breath caught as she realized the truth she'd been avoiding. It wasn't, "I didn't think." She stopped, forced herself to be honest. Maybe I did. After Chicago, I told myself it was about qualifications, about fit, about control, Marcus finished gently. I understand, Victoria. I do. She looked at him then, really looked at him. The way the morning light caught the gold flecks in his dark eyes, the scar above his eyebrow that spoke of stories untold, the careful way he held himself, strong but never threatening. Tell me about your scar, she said quietly. Marcus's hand unconsciously moved to his forehead. Kandahar Province, Afghanistan. I was 22, part of a convoy protection unit. We hit an IED, improvised explosive device. 3 soldiers died that day. His voice carried the weight of old grief, carefully contained but never forgotten. I was the ranking sergeant. My job was to keep them safe, and I failed. Victoria turned fully toward him now, their knees almost touching on the bench. How did you fail? I should have seen it coming. Should have taken a different route, should have. Marcus stopped, shook his head. The rational part of my mind knows there was nothing I could have done differently. But the heart doesn't listen to reason. Is that why you got into security work? To protect people? Marcus nodded. After I came back, finished my MBA, I thought corporate security would be different. Safer. But every rejection felt like failing those soldiers all over again. Like I wasn't good enough to protect anyone. A small child's laughter drifted across the park, bright and innocent. Victoria watched Marcus's face soften at the sound. You have a daughter, she said. It wasn't a question. Marcus's entire demeanor transformed, pain giving way to pure love. He pulled out his phone, showing her a photo of a beautiful little girl with pigtails and an infectious smile. Zara. She's 8, brilliant, and the reason I get up every morning. Her mother. He paused, choosing his words carefully. She died when Zara was 3. Cancer. I've been raising her alone ever since. Victoria stared at the photo, seeing something she'd never allowed herself to want. Family, love, purpose beyond profit margins. She's beautiful, Victoria whispered. She wants to be a scientist. Asks questions about everything. Why is the sky blue? How do airplanes fly? What makes people different colors? Marcus's smile was both proud and pained. Last week she asked why Daddy couldn't find a job even though he's the smartest person she knows. The confession hit Victoria like a physical blow. Here was a man, educated, honorable, devoted, reduced to explaining unemployment to his 8-year-old daughter because of barriers he couldn't control and prejudices he couldn't fight. Marcus, she started, but he held up his hand. I'm not telling you this for pity, Victoria. I'm telling you because last night, for the first time in years, I felt like someone saw me. Really saw me. Not my size, not my color, not the assumptions that come with both. Just me. He stood up, extending his hand to her. Want to walk some more? There's something else I need to show you. Victoria took his hand without hesitation, letting him pull her to her feet. They walked deeper into the park, past the Alice in Wonderland statue where children climbed and played, past the conservatory garden where spring flowers bloomed in careful rows. Near the park's edge, Marcus stopped beside a food cart operated by an elderly black man with kind eyes and weathered hands. Mr. Henry, Marcus called out, and the man's face broke into a wide grin. Marcus. My boy, what brings you to New York? Job interview, Marcus replied, then gestured to Victoria. "Mr. Henry, I'd like you to meet Victoria. Victoria, this is Henry Williams. He owns 3 of these carts and is working his way toward opening a restaurant in Harlem." Victoria shook Henry's hand, surprised by his firm grip and genuine warmth. "This young man," Henry said to Victoria, "helped me fight off some teenagers who were trying to rob me 6 months ago when I was visiting Detroit. Wouldn't take a reward, wouldn't even let me buy him lunch. Just said helping was the right thing to do." Victoria looked between the 2 men, seeing another piece of Marcus's character revealed, not through words, but through actions witnessed by others. "You never mentioned that," she said to Marcus. He shrugged. "Wasn't worth mentioning. Mr. Henry needed help, I was there." As they bought coffee and continued walking, Victoria realized she was seeing herself clearly for the first time in years. Her rules, her walls, her carefully constructed barriers, they weren't protecting her company. They were protecting her from the terrifying possibility of being wrong, of having to admit that fear had made her smaller than she wanted to be. Have you ever discovered that your protective walls were actually holding you back from something beautiful? Sometimes our biggest breakthroughs come when we're willing to examine our own assumptions. What's one belief you've had to challenge about yourself or others? Share your transformation story below. The sun climbed higher over Manhattan as 2 wounded souls continued their walk through Central Park, each step taking them further from who they'd been and closer to who they might become together. The morning sun painted the East River in shades of gold as Victoria and Marcus walked across the Brooklyn Bridge, the city's awakening symphony playing around them. It had been 3 days since the elevator incident, 3 days of tentative conversations and careful trust-building that had led them here, to this quiet moment suspended between Manhattan's towering ambition and Brooklyn's honest charm. "I never walk anywhere anymore," Victoria admitted, her designer heels clicking against the wooden planks of the pedestrian walkway. She'd traded her usual armor of power suits for dark jeans and a cashmere sweater, looking more human than Marcus had ever seen her. "There's always a car, always someone driving me from point A to point B. I'd forgotten what the city actually sounds like." Marcus smiled, his massive frame somehow gentler in the morning light. "My daughter Zara would love this view. She's obsessed with bridges, says they're like giant puzzles connecting different worlds." His voice carried that familiar warmth it always held when he spoke of his daughter. "Tell me about her," Victoria said, surprising them both with a genuine curiosity in her voice. They found a spot along the railing. The Manhattan skyline stretched before them like a promise. Marcus pulled out his phone, showing her a photo of a beautiful 8-year-old with pigtails and a gap-toothed grin, wearing a University of Michigan sweatshirt that dwarfed her small frame. "That's my everything right there. Zara Marie Washington, future engineer, current pain in my backside, and the smartest person I know." Victoria studied the photo, something shifting in her chest. "She has your eyes. That same determination." "Yeah, well, she gets the stubborn streak from her mama," Marcus said softly, his expression growing distant. "Sarah died when Zara was 2. Car accident on I-94 during a winter storm. One minute we're planning Zara's birthday party, the next." He shook his head, the old pain still fresh after 6 years. Victoria's hand found his arm without conscious thought. "I'm so sorry, Marcus. Sarah used to say that love wasn't about finding someone perfect, it was about finding someone whose imperfections fit perfectly with yours." Marcus gazed out at the water, his voice barely above a whisper. "I haven't felt that kind of connection since her." The admission hung between them, heavy with implication. Victoria felt her carefully constructed walls trembling, threatening to crumble entirely. "My father died when I was 25, she found herself saying, words she'd never spoken aloud tumbling out. "Heart attack in his office at Sterling Enterprises. I found him there the next morning, slumped over the quarterly reports he'd been reviewing. He'd been working himself to death, literally, trying to build something lasting for me. Marcus turned to face her fully, his dark eyes reflecting the morning light. That's a heavy legacy to carry. He used to bring me to the office on Saturdays when I was little. I'd sit in his chair, pretending to be the boss, making important decisions about which flavor of ice cream the company should serve in the cafeteria. Victoria's laugh was soft, tinged with grief. He'd listen to every ridiculous proposal with complete seriousness, then explain why some ideas needed more thought. Sounds like a good man. He was. But he was also. Victoria hesitated, then pushed forward. He was scared. Scared of change, scared of people who didn't look or think like him. He built Sterling Enterprises to be exclusive, controlled. I thought I was honoring his memory by maintaining those standards, but maybe you were just scared too, Marcus finished gently. Victoria nodded, tears threatening for the first time in years. I was 17 when the Chicago incident happened. 3 men broke into our house during a charity gala my parents were hosting. They tied up the staff, terrorized the guests, stole everything they could carry. One of them. She paused, gathering strength. One of them looked exactly like me, Marcus said, understanding flooding his features. I know it's not fair. I know it's wrong. But for 15 years, every time I saw someone who reminded me of that night, I couldn't breathe. They stood in comfortable silence, the weight of shared vulnerability settling between them. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out a worn leather wallet, extracting a small, faded photograph. This is my grandfather, Samuel Washington. He was a porter on the Pennsylvania Railroad back in the 1940s. Used to travel from Detroit to New York City every week, carrying bags for people who wouldn't even look him in the eye. Marcus traced the photo's edges with his thumb. He told me once that the secret to dignity wasn't in how others treated you, it was in how you chose to treat others, even when they didn't deserve it. Victoria studied the photograph, seeing the same quiet strength in the older man's face that she'd come to recognize in Marcus. He sounds wise. He was. He also told me something else. Boy, someday you're going to meet someone who's been hurt so badly, they've forgotten how to trust their own heart. When that happens, you love them gentle, you love them patient, and you love them true until they remember who they were before the world taught them to be afraid. The words hit Victoria like a physical blow, recognition flooding through her. Marcus wasn't just sharing a memory. He was offering her a lifeline, a way back to the woman she'd been before fear had calcified around her heart like armor. Marcus, You don't have to say anything, he interrupted gently. I just want you to know that I see you, Victoria. Not the CEO, not the billionaire, not the woman behind the walls. I see the girl who used to play boss in her daddy's office, making decisions about ice cream flavors with complete seriousness. Victoria felt something crack inside her chest, not breaking but opening. Like the first thaw of spring after a brutal winter. How do you do that? Do what? Make it feel safe to be me. The real me. Marcus stepped closer, his presence warm and steady. Maybe because I know what it's like to build walls. Mine were just different than yours. Every job interview, every networking event, every time I walked into a room where I was the only person who looked like me, I learned to make myself smaller, quieter, less threatening. But with you. He paused, searching for the right words. With you, I feel like I can be exactly as big as I am. The morning crowd had thickened around them, joggers and commuters creating a river of humanity flowing past their private island of conversation. But Victoria felt suspended in time, caught between her past and a future she was only beginning to imagine. Zara's birthday is next month, Marcus said suddenly. She's turning 9, and she's requested the world's most elaborate princess castle cake and a party with at least 27 balloons because 9 times 3 is her lucky number. Victoria found herself smiling at the specificity. Sounds like quite the celebration. It will be. Detroit's not exactly known for its fairy tale venues, but I'm going to make it magical for her somehow. Marcus's expression grew thoughtful. You know what she asked for when I told her I might be getting a new job? What? She said, Daddy, I hope whoever hires you sees how good your heart is, not just how strong your arms are. Marcus chuckled softly. 8 years old, and she's already wiser than most adults I know. Victoria felt her breath catch. The innocence of a child's perspective, the pure faith that goodness would be recognized and rewarded, it highlighted just how cynical she'd become, how far she drifted from her own childhood optimism. She sounds extraordinary. She is. And she deserves a father who isn't afraid to take up space in the world, who doesn't apologize for existing. Marcus turned to face Manhattan's skyline, his profile strong against the morning sky. Working for Sterling Enterprises would change everything for us. Not just the money, though God knows we need it. It would mean I could finally stop making myself smaller. The weight of responsibility settled on Victoria's shoulders like a familiar coat. She held this man's future in her hands, this little girl's dreams balanced on her decision. But more than that, she held the key to her own transformation. Marcus, she began, then stopped. The words she needed felt too big, too dangerous. He waited, patient as always, giving her the space to find her courage. What if I told you that I think my father would have liked you? The admission came out quietly, but it felt like shouting. Not because you're safe or unthreatening, but because you remind me of him in the ways that matter. The dedication, the integrity, the way you do anything to protect the people you love. Marcus's smile was radiant. I'd say that's the highest compliment you could give me. They began walking again, their steps naturally synchronizing as they made their way back toward Manhattan. The city spread before them, full of possibility and promise. There's something I want to show you, Victoria said as they approached the Manhattan side of the bridge. Somewhere I haven't been in years, but I think it's time. Have you ever had someone see past your walls to the real you underneath? Sometimes the people who challenge us the most are exactly who we need. What's the bravest conversation you've ever had? Share below. Courage is contagious. As they walked back into the heart of the city, neither Victoria nor Marcus noticed the photographer across the street, capturing their easy intimacy for tomorrow's gossip pages. Neither saw the black sedan that had been following Victoria since she left her apartment that morning, or the way its occupant reached for his phone with urgent purpose. For now, there was only this moment, two people discovering that love doesn't ask permission before it transforms everything in its path. The leaked photographs appeared on every major financial blog by 8 a.m. Thursday morning. Victoria Sterling, Billionaire CEO, caught in what appeared to be intimate moments with her bodyguard across Manhattan's most romantic locations. The headlines were vicious. Sterling silver spoon tarnished, CEO's secret affair with employee, from boardroom to bedroom. Victoria's hands trembled as she scrolled through her phone in the back of her Bentley, each swipe revealing another damaging article. The carefully constructed image she'd spent years building was crumbling in real time. Pull over, she commanded her driver, her voice barely above a whisper. The car stopped along Fifth Avenue, across from the Metropolitan Museum. Through the tinted windows, she could see photographers already gathering outside the Sterling Enterprises building. Her empire was under siege, and she knew exactly who had orchestrated this attack. Her phone buzzed. A text from Richard Blackstone, her former business partner and the man who'd betrayed her in Chicago. Should have stuck to your own kind, Victoria. The board meeting is in an hour. Hope your little experiment was worth it. Meanwhile, Marcus stood in his hotel room at the Roosevelt, watching the news coverage with growing horror. The man on screen wasn't him. It was someone who looked remarkably similar, but the photos were clearly manipulated. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to destroy both him and Victoria. His phone had been buzzing non-stop. Reporters, his mother in Detroit, even his ex-wife calling to demand explanations. But worst of all was Zara's tearful video call from her grandmother's house. "Daddy, the kids at school are saying mean things about you on their tablets," she sobbed, her 8-year-old heart breaking. "They're saying you're a bad man who tricks people." Marcus felt his world tilting. Everything he'd worked for, everything he dreamed of providing for his daughter, was being destroyed by lies. But more than that, he was watching Victoria's reputation burn alongside his own. The hotel room door suddenly burst open. Victoria stood there, her usually perfect appearance disheveled, her eyes wild with desperation and fury. "It was you," she breathed, her voice shaking. "This was all part of some elaborate plan, wasn't it? Get close to me, make me trust you, then destroy everything." Marcus stepped back, stunned. "Victoria, what are you talking about?" "Richard called me. He has evidence, financial records showing payments to you dating back 6 months. You've been working for him this whole time." Her voice rose with each word, pain and betrayal bleeding through her usual composure. "Every moment, every touch, every time you made me believe that someone could actually care about me, it was all a lie." "That's impossible," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "I've never taken a penny from anyone named Richard. I've never even heard that name before yesterday." Victoria pulled out her phone, showing him bank statements with his name and social security number. Deposits of $50,000 monthly for 6 months, all from Blackstone Consulting. The evidence was damning and obviously fabricated, but in her emotional state, Victoria couldn't see past her fear. "Look at this," she screamed, throwing the phone at him. "Look at what you've done to me. I let you in. I let you past every wall I'd built, and you destroyed me just like everyone else." Marcus caught the phone, studying the documents with a trained eye. "Victoria, these are fake. Anyone with basic computer skills could fabricate these records. The formatting is wrong. The bank routing numbers don't match." "Stop." Her voice cracked, raw with pain. "Just stop lying to me. I should have listened to my instincts. I should have stuck to my rules. Black men, white men, it doesn't matter. You all want the same thing. To take everything from me." The words hung in the air like poison. Marcus felt something inside him die at the venom in her voice, the way she reduced their connection to nothing more than a racial stereotype and a con game. "Is that really what you think of me?" His voice was quiet now, dangerous in its calmness. "After everything we've shared, everything we've been through together, you think I'm just another stereotype trying to use you?" Victoria's chest heaved as she fought back tears. The boardroom was waiting. Her empire was crumbling. And the one person she'd allowed herself to trust, the one person who'd made her feel truly alive, was apparently the architect of her destruction. "Get out," she whispered. "Get out of my city, out of my life, out of my head. Take whatever Richard paid you and disappear." "Victoria." "Get out." The scream tore from her throat, primal and broken. "I never want to see your face again. You got what you wanted. You destroyed the Ice Queen. Congratulations." Marcus set her phone gently on the hotel dresser. For a moment, he studied her face, memorizing the woman who'd shown him what love could feel like before snatching it away with prejudice and paranoia. "I'm sorry you believe that," he said quietly. "I'm sorry your world has been so cruel that you can't recognize genuine love when it's standing right in front of you. But mostly, I'm sorry for my daughter, who has to grow up in a world where people like you exist." He walked toward the door, pausing only to look back at her one final time. "For what it's worth, every moment we shared was real. Every touch, every laugh, every time I told you that you were beautiful, it was all real. But you're right about one thing. We come from different worlds. I come from one where love matters more than fear." The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving Victoria alone with her rage and her breaking heart. 20 minutes later, she sat in the Sterling Enterprises boardroom, facing a table full of hostile board members. Richard Blackstone sat at the far end, his smile predatory and satisfied. "Gentlemen," she began, her voice hollow but steady, "I assume you've seen the morning news." The vote of no confidence passed 8-2. By noon, Victoria Sterling was no longer CEO of the company that bore her name. The empire she'd built, the rules she'd enforced, the walls she'd constructed, everything lay in ruins. As she cleaned out her office, packing 15 years of achievement into cardboard boxes, Victoria found the small origami crane Marcus had made for her during their evening at the Brooklyn Bridge. Such a simple thing, folded from a restaurant napkin, but it had made her laugh when she'd forgotten how. She crushed it in her palm and let the pieces fall to the floor. Outside, Manhattan continued its relentless pace, indifferent to the destruction of dreams and the shattering of hearts. Two people who had found something beautiful in each other's brokenness now walked separate paths through the city that had brought them together, each carrying wounds that might never heal. The rules were clear again. Trust no one. Love no one. Survive. But survival, Victoria was discovering, felt remarkably like death. The silence in Marcus's Corktown apartment felt different now, heavier, more final. 3 days had passed since he'd walked out of Sterling Enterprises, since Victoria's words had cut through him like shattered glass. The navy suit hung in his closet like a discarded dream, wrinkled from the journey back to Detroit that felt like a retreat from everything he dared to hope for. He sat at his small kitchen table, Zara's homework spread between them, but his mind was 635 miles away. His daughter's pencil scratched against the paper as she worked on her math problems, occasionally glancing up at her father with those wise 8-year-old eyes that saw too much. "Daddy, you've been staring at that coffee for like forever," Zara said, not looking up from her multiplication tables. "And it's probably cold now." Marcus blinked, focusing on his daughter's face. She had her mother's intuition, that ability to read the room even when adults thought they were hiding their pain. "Sorry, baby girl. Just thinking about the mean lady in New York." The simplicity of childhood could cut deeper than any boardroom betrayal. Marcus had tried to explain the interview without revealing too much, but Zara had picked up on his disappointment, his anger, his hurt. She'd started referring to Victoria as the mean lady, with a kind of moral clarity that only children possessed. "Yeah," he admitted, reaching over to help her with a particularly difficult problem. "About the mean lady. Did you tell her you were sorry?" Marcus paused, his hand hovering over her workbook. "Sorry for what, sweetheart?" "For whatever made her so mad that she forgot how to be nice." The words hit him like a physical blow. Out of the mouths of babes. He'd been so focused on his own pain, his own righteous anger, that he'd never considered what might have made Victoria build those walls so high, so thick. What had happened to her that made trust feel like a luxury she couldn't afford? Meanwhile, 635 miles away in Manhattan, Victoria stood in her corner office as the sun set over Central Park, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. The same view that had always brought her comfort now felt like a prison. The quarterly reports lay untouched on her desk, numbers that usually commanded her complete attention, now meaningless in the wake of what she'd lost. Richard Blackstone's resignation letter sat open beside her computer, his words burning into her memory. "I cannot, in good conscience, continue to work for someone who allows personal prejudice to override professional judgment. Marcus Washington was the best candidate we've seen in years, and you destroyed him for reasons that had nothing to do with his qualifications. She'd been alone before, had preferred it, even. But this loneliness felt different, sharper. It carried the weight of recognition, the terrible clarity of seeing herself through Marcus's eyes and finding herself wanting. Her reflection in the window showed a woman who had everything and nothing all at once. The empire she'd built, the wealth she'd accumulated, the power she'd amassed, all of it felt hollow without someone to share it with, someone who saw beyond the carefully constructed walls to the frightened woman inside. The intercom buzzed, her new assistant's voice uncertain. "Ms. Sterling? Your driver is waiting downstairs for the charity gala." Victoria closed her eyes. The Children's Hospital fundraiser at the plaza, another performance, another evening of champagne and calculated smiles. The irony wasn't lost on her that she'd be raising money for children while having driven away the man whose own daughter represented everything pure and hopeful about the future. "Cancel it," she said quietly. "Ma'am. Cancel all my appointments for the rest of the week. I need to think." For the first time in 15 years, Victoria Sterling was questioning everything she'd built her life upon. The rules that had protected her had also imprisoned her. The walls that had kept pain out had also kept love from entering. Her fingers traced the edge of Marcus's employment application, the one she'd kept despite herself. His photograph looked back at her, intelligent eyes, strong features, the quiet dignity of a man who'd faced adversity and chosen grace over bitterness. At least until she'd stripped that grace away with her cruelty. Back in Detroit, Marcus stood in his daughter's bedroom doorway, watching her sleep. Zara's breathing was even and peaceful, her small hand clutched around the stuffed elephant he'd bought her for her last birthday. On her nightstand sat the drawing she'd made earlier, a stick-figure representation of him in a suit, standing next to a tall building with Daddy's new job written in purple crayon across the top. The faith of a child was both beautiful and heartbreaking. His phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment, his heart leaped. Could it be Victoria? But it was just his buddy from the plant, asking if he wanted to pick up an extra shift tomorrow. Reality settling back in with the weight of unpaid bills and diminished dreams. But as he stood there, something shifted inside him. Zara's words echoed in his mind. "Did you tell her you were sorry?" Not sorry for who he was, or what he looked like, or the strength that intimidated some people. Sorry for whatever pain had made Victoria lash out like a wounded animal. He thought about the moment in the elevator when the power had gone out, when he'd glimpsed something vulnerable and real beneath her polished exterior. The woman who'd trembled in the darkness, who'd leaned into his strength instead of fearing it. That woman was still there, buried under layers of hurt and defensive rage. Marcus pulled out his phone and opened a new message. His fingers hovered over the keyboard for long minutes, words forming and dissolving as he searched for the right thing to say. Not an apology for existing, but an acknowledgement of shared humanity. Meanwhile, in Manhattan, Victoria sat on her Italian leather sofa, a glass of wine untouched beside her. The apartment felt cavernous, filled with expensive things but empty of life. She'd built this existence to protect herself, but from what? And at what cost? Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost dismissed it, then something made her look. The message was simple. "Ms. Sterling, I don't know what happened to make you build such high walls, but I want you to know that strength doesn't always come from standing alone. Sometimes it comes from having the courage to let someone stand with you. I hope you find whatever peace you're looking for. Marcus Washington." Victoria read the message once, then again. Tears she hadn't allowed herself to shed in 3 years began to fall. Here was a man she'd humiliated, dismissed, and wounded, offering her compassion instead of condemnation, grace instead of revenge. Her hands shook as she typed her response, deleted it, typed again. What do you say to someone whose heart you've tried to break? How do you apologize for being so afraid of your own capacity for love that you'd rather destroy it than risk it? The cursor blinked at her, waiting. Outside, Manhattan glittered with the dreams of 8 million people, most of them braver than she'd been. Most of them willing to risk their hearts for the chance at something real. In Detroit, Marcus set his phone on the kitchen counter and made himself a cup of coffee. He'd said what needed to be said, offered what grace he could. The rest was up to her. But regardless of Victoria's response, or lack thereof, something had shifted inside him. Zara's innocent wisdom had reminded him that healing often began with extending compassion to those who'd hurt us. His phone buzzed again. This time, when he saw Victoria's name on the screen, his heart did more than leap, it soared. Marcus, I've spent 3 years building walls to keep the world out, and in the process, I've locked myself in. I don't know if you can forgive me, if anyone can forgive me for what I said and how I acted. But I want to try to be better. I want to try to be the woman who deserves the kind of grace you just showed me. Can we start over? Can we try again? Victoria. Marcus smiled, the first genuine smile he'd worn in days. Outside, Detroit was waking up to another day of possibility, another chance for redemption. He looked at Zara's drawing on the refrigerator, at his daughter's unwavering faith in her father's dreams. His response was immediate. Everyone deserves a second chance to choose love over fear. When do you want to talk? The reply came within seconds. How about now? Can I call you? Marcus stepped out onto his small balcony, looking up at the stars that connected Detroit to Manhattan, two cities bound by the promise of new beginnings. I'm ready when you are. Sometimes the biggest choice isn't about being right or wrong. It's about choosing courage over fear, grace over revenge. What's the hardest choice you've ever had to make about forgiveness? Share your story below. Your courage might give someone else the strength to make their own leap of faith. 3 weeks had passed since the shattering confrontation in Victoria's office. 3 weeks of sleepless nights, unanswered calls, and the hollow echo of words that couldn't be taken back. Victoria Sterling stood in the center of Grand Central Station's main concourse, her designer heels clicking nervously against the marble floor as thousands of travelers rushed past her like water around a stone. The irony wasn't lost on her. She who controlled boardrooms and commanded empires now felt utterly powerless in the face of her own heart. Track 17, she whispered to herself, clutching the crumpled train schedule. The 3:47 p.m. to Detroit. She'd memorized Marcus's routine from their brief time together, knew he took this train every other Friday to see Zara. It was a desperate gamble, showing up here unannounced, but 3 weeks of silence had taught her something she'd never expected to learn. She was in love. Not the calculated attraction she'd felt for appropriate suitors from her social circle. Not the convenient partnerships her board members' sons had offered. This was the kind of love that made her question everything she'd built, everything she believed about herself. Her phone buzzed. A text from her assistant. Board meeting moved to 4 p.m. Where are you? Victoria turned off her phone. Across the terminal, near the departure board, a familiar silhouette caught her eye. Marcus stood with his back to her, his broad shoulders unmistakable even in the crowd. He wore the same navy suit from their first meeting, and something about his stillness suggested he was waiting for someone. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she approached. Marcus. He turned slowly, and the surprise in his dark eyes gave way to something more guarded. Victoria. What are you doing here? She faltered, suddenly aware of how this looked. The billionaire CEO hunting down the man she'd wronged in one of New York's busiest transportation hubs. I needed to see you. To offer me another check. His voice held no malice, only tired resignation. I told you before. To apologize. The words rushed out of her. To tell you that you were right about everything. About me, about my company, about the walls I've built around myself. Marcus glanced around the busy terminal, then back at her. This isn't really the place. I fired Gregory Michaels, she interrupted. And Janet Crowley. Half the board, actually. Anyone who participated in that ambush. Sterling Enterprises is implementing new hiring practices, diversity training, everything we should have done years ago. His expression remained neutral. That's good. Your employees deserve better. I deserve better. Her voice cracked slightly. I deserve to be the kind of person worth knowing. Worth caring about. The departure announcement echoed through the terminal. Track 17, now boarding for Detroit, Michigan. Marcus shifted his bag on his shoulder. I should go. Zara's waiting. Take me with you. The words hung between them like a bridge neither had expected to see built. What? Marcus's eyebrows rose. I want to meet her. Your daughter. I want. Victoria took a shaky breath. I want to know the man you are when you're not fighting against people like me. I want to see the life you've built despite every obstacle thrown in your way. Victoria, you can't just. I can. I'm the CEO, remember? I can do whatever I want. She smiled for the first time in weeks, and it felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. And what I want is to get on that train with you. If you'll have me. Marcus studied her face, searching for something. Why? Really? She looked around the grand terminal, at the celestial ceiling painted with constellations, at the countless people rushing toward their destinations, their dreams, their futures. Because I've spent my whole life in buildings like these, magnificent, impressive, and completely hollow inside. You showed me what it feels like to be real. Last boarding call, track 17. Marcus held out his hand. It's a 4-hour ride. Long time to spend with someone you might not actually like once you get to know them. Victoria interlaced her fingers with his, marveling at how right it felt. That's a risk I'm willing to take. They walked toward track 17 together, past the information booth where a young couple was sharing a tearful goodbye, past the newsstand where an elderly man bought flowers for his wife, past all the small human dramas that made up the beautiful chaos of life. Marcus. Victoria said as they found their seats on the train. Yeah. Thank you. For what? For walking into that boardroom 3 weeks ago. For not giving up on me when I gave up on myself. The train pulled away from Penn Station, carrying them toward Detroit, toward Zara, toward a future neither of them had planned but both were ready to embrace. 4 hours later, in Detroit, Zara Washington was 8 years old, brilliant, and absolutely unimpressed by wealth. She sat across from Victoria in their small kitchen, carefully coloring a picture of a castle while interrogating her father's unexpected guest. So you're Daddy's boss? Zara asked, not looking up from her drawing. I was, Victoria said carefully. Now I'm hoping to be something more like a friend. Friends share. Zara held up a purple crayon. You can color the flag. Victoria accepted the crayon like it was a precious gift. She hadn't colored in 25 years, hadn't sat at a kitchen table this small since childhood, hadn't felt this nervous about making a good impression since her first board presentation. What do you think, baby girl? Marcus asked from where he stood making sandwiches. Should we keep her around? Zara looked up at Victoria with eyes exactly like her father's, thoughtful, kind, and seeing more than most adults gave her credit for. She makes you smile different, Daddy. Like Like when you watch me ride my bike without training wheels. Victoria's throat tightened. Is that good? It's the best kind of smile, Zara pronounced solemnly. It means you're proud and scared and happy all at once. 6 months later, Victoria Sterling Washington, she'd hyphenated her name, much to the board's initial horror, stood in the same Grand Central Station where her new life had begun. This time, she wasn't alone. Marcus adjusted his new suit, custom-tailored, because the man who'd become Sterling Enterprises' chief security officer and her husband deserved nothing less. Zara spun in her flower girl dress, the yellow roses in her hair matching the ones in Victoria's bouquet. "You ready, Mrs. Sterling Washington?" Marcus asked, offering his arm. "I've been ready my whole life," she replied. "I just didn't know what I was waiting for." They walked out of Grand Central together, past the celestial ceiling that had witnessed their reunion, toward the car that would take them to their reception at the Rainbow Room. The same terminal that had seen their separation now celebrated their beginning. Victoria's phone buzzed with congratulatory messages from business partners, society friends, and board members who'd learned to respect the changes she'd brought to Sterling Enterprises. But the message that mattered most was from Zara, who'd insisted on having her own phone for the occasion. "Welcome to our family, Mommy Victoria. Daddy says love makes us braver. I think you're the bravest person I know." As their car pulled into Manhattan traffic, Victoria caught Marcus's eye in the reflection of the window. He was looking at her with that expression Zara had identified months ago, proud and scared and happy all at once. "Any regrets?" he asked softly. Victoria thought of her old life, all glass and steel and carefully controlled interactions. Then she looked at Zara, who was already asleep against her shoulder, and at Marcus, whose presence had taught her that the strongest walls were the ones built around love, not against it. "Only one," she said. "What's that?" "That it took me 34 years to walk into Grand Central Station." Marcus squeezed her hand. "Good things are worth waiting for." Outside their window, New York City glittered like a promise kept, and Victoria Sterling Washington finally understood what it meant to be truly powerful. It wasn't about controlling others, but about having the courage to let yourself be transformed. Love has the power to change us in ways we never expected. What's the most important lesson you've learned about letting go of your preconceptions? Share your story of unexpected connection below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if this story touched your heart, let us know what moment resonated most with you.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you love this story, you will surely enjoy the next one. It's crazier and more intriguing as you can never imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.